November 10th, 2025. This is a regular meeting of the Governing Board of the Catalina Foothills School District. And on behalf of the Governing Board, I want to welcome all of you to tonight's meeting. As you know, we're meeting on a Monday. We usually meet on Tuesdays, which would be tomorrow, but tomorrow's Veterans Day. So I briefly just want to express on behalf of the board our gratitude to those in our CFSD community who are active service members, past service members, and also to the families of service members. All of you give and sacrifice so much for our country, and we deeply appreciate your service. In a few minutes, I will read the rules of order for public comment at governing board meetings. If you wish to make a comment remotely, you should have signed up using the Google form that's available under the YouTube Live description. If you don't see that link, please refresh your YouTube live stream. If you are attending in person and you wish to address the governing board, then we would ask you to please fill out this purple sheet that was located at the table in the front of the room when you came in. I don't have any as of yet, neither do I have anybody online who appears to be waiting to make a public comment, but it's not too late. If you wish to do so, just please either fill out the purple form if you're here with us in person, or the Google form if you're attending remotely. If there's a public hearing this evening and you wish to make a comment during that hearing, then you can sign up just prior to the public hearing, or you'll have another opportunity to do so when we open that hearing. At this moment, I would ask all of you to please rise and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The Governing Board welcomes public comments at its meetings by providing 2 opportunities for the public to address the board. If your topic of interest is not on the agenda, you may address the board during the public comments time slot near the beginning of the meeting. Or if the topic is on the agenda, you may speak just prior to the discussion of that agenda topic. In the event there is a public hearing, the opportunity to speak will be reopened. If you're joining remotely and wish to make a public comment, you should have already submitted the Google form provided with the YouTube link. And again, for those of you attending in person, please hand the completed purple form, request to address the governing board, to our board secretary. The information that is requested on these forms is required for our meeting minutes. Speakers will be called upon when it is your turn to address the board. For those attending remotely, you may choose to enable your camera, and as a reminder to remote attendees who wish to speak, please unmute your microphone when called upon. Each speaker has 3 minutes to address the board. The sound of a buzzer indicates the end of your 3 minutes. In the event of a large number of speakers, the board may limit the time so that we can conduct the business that is on this agenda. By law, the board cannot discuss, consider, or vote on topics that are not on the agenda. This assures our community that everyone is aware of the topics that will be discussed this evening. But if you wish to discuss a topic with us through written communication, board members' contact information can be found on the district's website. We appreciate the community's attendance and comments at this meeting. The first item on our agenda this evening is Outstanding Achievements, item 1.4, and for that we turn to our superintendent, Dr. Denise Bartlett.
Thank you. It is my pleasure to highlight a host of things tonight. If you've seen the materials, there are many students listed. I'm not going to read all of the names, but all of the names will be listed in our border tomorrow. But our first one is our Catalina Foothills High School Symphonic Strings. They earned top honors at the Arizona Band and Orchestra Directors Association Fall Festival in Tucson. They earned a Superior with Distinction, the highest possible rating, and they received that for the 3rd consecutive year, which is a great accomplishment for them. They are directed by Mr. Ryan Watson in their orchestra program, so he has given outstanding leadership to this group, and we commend him for that. The next one is our Catalina Foothills High School Advanced Placement AP recognition. This is amazing. We are recognizing 299 students for AP achievement in the 2024-2025 school year. So students posted an average AP score of 3.98, which the average for most typical high schools is 3.0. We are almost a full point ahead of those. We have AP Scholar designations were awarded to 298 of the 299 students. We had 109 AP Scholars, which had an average score of 3.48. We have 54 AP Scholars with honor, which is a score of 3.91. And we had 135 AP Scholars with distinction, which is a 4.23 score. So we also had 5 students who earned the AP Capstone Diploma, and all 5 also received an AP Scholar designation. And we had 2 students earn the AP Seminar and Research Certificate, one of whom also earned the AP Scholar designation. So we've had, in total, the school conferred 305 awards to 299 unique students. Wow. So what an outstanding reflection of the high-level work by our students across multiple disciplines, and the consistent guidance of our skilled teachers. So we're very, that list of names will appear in our border tomorrow. I'm not going to read all of those
very
names.
long border.
It's 2.5 pages. We also have, we have our Catalina Foothills High School band earn the top honors at the 2025 University of Arizona Band Day. So our band, which we know is renowned, they closed out its 2025 marching season with a sweep of the top award at the University of Arizona Band Day, one of the state's premier marching competitions. So under the direction of Renee Shane Boyd, the Falcon Band earned first place in auxiliary, music, and visual performance, and received the prestigious Nunamaker Award for overall excellence, the event's highest honor. So it recognizes the most outstanding band across all divisions. So again, the achievement marks a fitting finale to an exceptional marching band season, and the work of our, not just Mrs. Shane Boyd, but our whole band community. You know, as parents, it takes a village to run that band program, and so we're very thankful that it came together at the perfect time. And finally, our golf team. We had both of our golf teams, our boys and our girls golf team, capped off impressive seasons with top finishes in the AIA Division II State Championship. The Falcon boys placed 3rd place in the state with a team score of 591, highlighted by a strong second-day surge that lifted them past several top-ranked programs. And the Falcon girls earned a 7th place team finish with a score of 695. And they had solid performances by our seniors, and both teams showcased and focused resilience and Falcon pride that defined Catalina Foothills athletics. So we're very proud of both of our teams. And it's not on this one, but I will just give you a preview. Our swim team also won state this weekend, so
yeah,
that will be on our next one. That we will highlight their accomplishment as well.
Wonderful. Congratulations to all of our scholars and musicians and golfers. Athletes. That's what I meant to say. Thank you. Thank you so much. We have come to agenda item 2.0, which is our public comments. And as I indicated, I do not have any purple sheets that have been handed to me.
You skipped the Star Award.
I skipped the Star Award. Oh my God. Anyone want to make a public comment now?
You guys didn't really come for anything special, did you?
No. Full house. How did I overlook that? I apologize. Item 1.5 is our CFSD Star Award, and this evening we welcome all of you. We are delighted that you're able to join us so that we can recognize your incredible accomplishments as 2026 National Merit semifinalists and commended students. And for our presentation this evening, I call board member Jacqueline Duvally up to our podium.
And they were part of my outstanding achievements last month.
Yes.
Hello, everyone. Whoop. Not used to being so close up to the microphone up here. So as Amy said, Ms. President Krause, one of our favorite things to do as a board is recognize students with our CFSD Star Award. We are so pleased to honor tonight's students, our class of 2026, who have achieved national merit recognition. The National Merit Recognition Scholarship Corporation has been around since 1955. It's a nonprofit, non-governmental organization whose mission is to recognize and honor the academically talented students of the United States. The enduring goals of its scholarship programs are to do the following: promote a wider and deeper respect for learning in general and for exceptionally talented individuals in particular. Shine a spotlight on brilliant students and encourage the pursuit of academic excellence at all levels of education. Stimulate increased support from organizations that wish to support and sponsor scholarships for outstanding scholastic talent. Since its inception, the organization has recognized over 3 million students and provided approximately 400,000 scholarships totaling over $1.5 billion. For the class of 2026, 1.3 million students entered the competition by taking the PSAT or NMSQT. More than 16,000 seniors in the class of 2026 were named National Merit Scholarship semifinalists, representing less than 1% of all U.S. high school seniors. On average, more than 1% of CFHS graduating students qualify for this distinction. These students are the highest scoring entrants in each state and have the opportunity to advance to the finalist stage and compete for scholarships. This year, our class of 2026 has 5 semifinalists. We also have 10 commended students, which places them among the top 50,000 entrants nationwide. About 1% of seniors nationwide are recognized as commended students, and at CFHS, 2% of our seniors qualified for the award. I'd like to note that many of the students who will be called up here tonight are not new to being recognized at board meetings. In fact, some of them are on the AP Scholars list that Dr. Bartlett just highlighted. But in addition to academics, they are the leaders who excel not just academically, but also in other activities, such as robotics, sports, and the arts, and our various clubs, too. It's also important to note that students do not often achieve this level of excellence and success in a vacuum. It does take individual time, perseverance, and discipline, but it is also important to remember the other factors that lead to student success. Families and our educators, who provide the tools, encouragement, and support systems that help their students thrive. Thank you to those individuals who have supported and will continue to support our students throughout their K-12 education and beyond. If you're a family member or educator, thank you for being here tonight to honor your student. And I'd ask that you please stand so we can give you a round of applause. Yeah. Don't be shy. I'm a parent too, sometimes it's nice to get a round of applause. So now, without further ado, I'm going to call up each of our semifinalists and commended students. We have a certificate of recognition for you as a way of marking your accomplishments. We'd also like to get a group picture, so please step off to the side. This is my Vanna White tonight. He'll hand you your certificate. This is board member Tom Logue. And once everyone has come up, we will get some pictures. So, our 2026 National Merit semifinalists are Ethan Lynn, William Luxbacher, Catherine McNulty, Madeline Reed, and Rex Shetler. Next, our 2026 commended students are William Ambry, Christina Angel, Owen Cantor Goldner, Alex Crampton. Arthur Filgaris Pinto. I hope I said that correctly. Zachary Henson. William Jacobson. Henry Moore. Thomas Vamos. And Leonard Williams. So before we get pictures, I want to again congratulate each of you. It takes a lot of hard work to get to where you are. We're so happy to recognize your achievement. And thank you for coming tonight, everyone, so we may do so and honor you appropriately. Thank you.
We'll have all of our honorees gather in the back for the photo, and then we'll take it for our official photo, and then we'll just take a few minutes and let you folks take your own photos and talk to your kids, and we'll just
that part.
enjoy the moment.
It was great. We only two kids weren't here tonight.
Yeah. Jacqueline, thank you. That was wonderful.
Well done.
Well done, as they say on the British Bake Off.
Well done.
I'm gonna have to
Well
watch
done.
that sometime. I've never seen that show.
Now I don't have to watch it. Thank you.
One of the kids came up and he had emailed me earlier about his husband. He was actually asking about giving some advice.
I think it's February.
Sounds right.
FaceTime.
Chuck couldn't remember.
I recognize the phone from a couple of weeks ago.
Love this. While you are all taking your photos, I'll just mention that, of course, everyone is welcome to stay for the remainder of our meeting, which is open to the public. And it's on the exciting agenda tonight. We have our 8th Ref Accountability Report, which in some degree, measure of thanks to all of you, all 7 of our Foothill schools earned a letter grade A from the Arizona Department of Education, and that is a one and only in the Southern Arizona sweep, so we're excited about that. I mean, you are welcome to stay, I wasn't kidding about that, but we certainly understand if you folks have other things that you'd rather be doing or need to be doing this evening, and again, we really appreciate you all being here.
Thank you for coming.
Congratulations. Thank you.
It's a good turnout considering tomorrow's a holiday.
Yeah, right.
It's our best and our brightest.
It's in the middle of the day. It's not like
Oh, thank you for coming, really.
Thank you.
Good night.
We love it when people come to meetings.
We
I love it
do.
when people
I
come to
know.
meetings.
It's awesome.
I'll give you a ride home if you want to. For full service board.
Well, it looks like every member of our audience is leaving.
It is a holiday tomorrow.
It is a holiday tomorrow. We have no public comments. I will call item 2.0 public comments, but note that we don't have any purple sheets, and I do not see anyone online, so I'll give it about another, well, obviously no one's turning in a purple sheet, but if you're attending remotely and you did want to make a public comment, you need to get that sheet in right away, or I'm gonna call time on public comments. Okay, seeing none, I will close our public comment time and move on to our consent agenda, items 3.1 through 3.12 this evening. Does any board member have a consent agenda item that they would like to pull for further discussion?
Yes. If I could pull 3.7 through 3.12, please.
Okay. Except for so items 3.1 to 3.6. Does anyone need to pull any of those? Okay, then as to those items, I will entertain a motion.
I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items 3.1, the governing board October 28, 2025 regular meeting minutes as presented, 3.2, the expense voucher memorandum as presented, 3.3, the field trip request memorandum as presented, 3.4, the fundraising request memorandum as presented, 3.5, the personnel memorandum as presented, and 3.6, the acceptance with gratitude of the gifts and donations memorandum as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second.
There's been a motion and a second, and also I failed to acknowledge that board member Gina Memmert is present online. I assume you can hear us, Gina?
This way, right?
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. Tom, 3.7 to 3.12.
This is a general comment across all 6 of these, but this felt like something that warranted more attention than flipping through on a consent agenda, because when you add up the amount of money that is represented from 3.7 to 3.12, if we take the maximum range on 312, we are over $17 million
Unbelievable.
in SFD awards. And I wanted to call that out, but also ask Dr. Bartlett to perhaps comment on the significance of that.
Absolutely. So, as you know, the School Facilities Division is limited in their funding, and so you really have to prove the need for this funding, and it often takes long amount of time to get funded. But Brian McNitt has been diligent about applying for and waiting for funding for our schools. You can see that 3 of these projects are for re-roofing the entire school. If you've ever put a roof on your house, you know how expensive that is. So just re-roofing 3 of our schools that are in need of that. We've had, leaking at Sunrise Drive, and so we've really been patient in waiting for this. The other one is a weatherization project at Ventana Vista, and that includes all of the ceiling and new doors and painting, and it's just a complete, total, not renovation, but it's just a ceiling of the campus. Yeah, it really improves the performance of the building as well as the look of the building. And then, of course, we have a project for the site drainage at Orange Grove Middle School, and then our fire alarm control system. To put this in perspective, 17 million in one sitting from SFD, our total bond that we went out for was 38.5 million. So almost half of this we would be going out for much larger bonds if we didn't get these awards from the School Facilities Division. So we are very thankful for the work that Brian McNitt as well as Carolyn Siebert has done to secure these and to get these projects rolling. And we really appreciate you being willing to approve these fundings as quickly as we can get them to you so that the work can begin. Because a roofing project is not something that can happen in a very small window of time. It's going to be expansive projects, so we're very appreciative to all of that. But just putting that in perspective, 17 million in relation to our bond of 38.5, it's a huge accomplishment. And he has other projects that have been approved, but they just haven't been awarded yet. So there will be more to come.
More to come. The other thing, to put this in perspective, 1 year's worth of capital funding for Foothills is about $3 million. And if you look at the least expensive roof that we're trying to replace, is at $3.8 million, which would leave absolutely nothing for anything else capital related in a given school year, which underlines the necessity of our bonds and our overrides, but also just the sheer value added with the grant program and the fact that our facilities department has been so successful in securing these funds for our district.
And these are projects that you're not going to notice.
Right, right. It's just a new roof. It's not sexy.
Yes, not a lot of people are gonna notice a new roof or the weatherization or the new fire alarm, but they're very integral to sustaining our buildings.
Do they work on the roof while we're in session?
They will. They're going to start it in May, well, for Orange Grove. They're going to start it in May when they do their other project that they're doing, replacing the air conditioning unit of the MPR. Sunrise Drive, they're going to start a little bit sooner than that. We're going to work around the students because, you know, to do a new roof, you take off the air
Yeah.
conditioner,
Oh,
and
yeah.
so those rooms are not going to be usable. So we're going to try to do it around where we can move our classrooms around. But no, they're going to start as early as April, probably. Because they're going to take, and they're not probably going to be done before the school year starts either. So
Yeah, I would imagine it's a fairly lengthy.
These things are also really important because when you pull up to a school and you see a new roof and well-maintained grounds and buildings, it's a sense of pride for the students, the staff, and our community as well.
yeah, it's the first impression that you see too. It's the, you know,
Well,
that,
I think just having, I won't say that we're just adequate facilities, but having adequate facilities that are in a good state of repair tells our students that we value them.
Right.
You know, I can't imagine being a kid going to some of the school districts who haven't been able to enjoy some of this funding with busted out windows and broken doors and visible indications that there's not enough money being spent on these students. And I think that's got to be tough for the kids. So the fact that we keep our buildings and our facilities in the state of repair that they're in, I think says a lot to our kids about how much we value them and how much our tax-paying constituency values our
the
students.
diligence of our staff of going around to find what needs to be fixed or what needs to be repaired.
Yeah.
They're very diligent about it.
Nothing better than maintenance and not deferring it.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Sure.
Please pass along our gratitude.
They will.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Please.
Absolutely.
So, as a procedural matter, I wish Carol Sigler was here. We have to do the rest of these individually?
No.
Or we can do them all in one motion?
I think we could do that. They were comments in general to all
All of them?
from 7 through 12, so I would think that we can do it much like we do the rest of the consent agenda.
Okay.
Not being Carol Siegler, whose name is on the wall, but as the person who's been in this room longest, I would suggest we could do them all at once.
Fabulous.
Not, you'll find out tomorrow.
We will find out from Carol tomorrow.
Would you like me to take the
Go
remainder?
for it.
I move that the governing board approve consent agenda items 3.7, the School Facilities Division Awards to Progressive Roofing, Arcadis, and Breckenridge Group Architects for the re-roofing project at Orange Grove Middle School totaling $6,903,226.92 as presented. 3.8, the School Facilities Division Awards to Progressive Roofing, Arcadis, and Breckenridge Group Architects for the re-roofing project at Canyon View Elementary School totaling $3,843,930.88 as presented. 3.9, the School Facilities Division Awards to Progressive Roofing, Arcadis, and Swayman Associates for the re-roofing project at Sunrise Drive Elementary School totaling $4,353,083.17 as presented. 3.10, the School Facilities Division Awards to Concord General Contracting, Arcadis, and BWS Architects for the weatherization project at Ventana Vista Elementary School totaling $1,200,395 as presented. 3.11, the terms and conditions for the acceptance of monies from the School Facilities Division Building Renewal Grant Fund for BRG project number BRG 007786 for the site drainage at Orange Grove Middle School in the estimated amount of $17,000 as presented. And 3.12, the terms and conditions for the acceptance of monies from the School Facilities Division Building Renewal Grant Fund for BRG project number BRG 007793 for the fire alarm control system replacement at Esperero Canyon Middle School with an estimated amount not to exceed $1,100,000 as presented.
Thank you. Is there a second?
I'll second. Oh, I'm sorry.
Jinx.
Eileen Jackson got the second. There's been a motion and a second to approve consent agenda items 3.7 through 3.12. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Didn't hear Gina. Hello, Ms. Memmert. Did you hear that motion? Did you vote? Thank you. Motion carries 5-0. Any opposed? Motion carries 5-0. No opposed. Motion carries 5-0. I gotta get with the program today. Thank you all, and thank you for those comments. Okay. New business. Item 4.1 is the approval of the 2026-2027 school year calendar. This was preliminarily approved last year and is on the agenda tonight for action. Associate Superintendent Mindy Westwood will present that.
Well, good evening. As President Krause said, we did preliminarily approve this calendar in November of 2024. The administrative team reviewed this calendar and had no further updates from last year. And we believe this calendar represents the best balance of calendar preferences and alternatives. We want you to be aware of some of the following. So new teachers will report to work on Wednesday, July 22nd, returning teachers on July 28th.
Is that similar to this year?
Very.
So early, oh my gosh.
Very.
Okay.
It's, yeah.
Okay.
We're just not quite to the place where we
Where-
can.
Where it flips
Yeah.
for a week, yeah.
Not quite.
Okay.
The first day of school is Monday, August 3rd. And I think this year we were the August 4th, yes.
Okay.
Elementary early release and middle school late start will be observed during the first week of school. The high school will begin at 8:35 a.m. and observe a regular day rotating schedule. The last day is Wednesday, May 19th, and it is a half day for students and a full day for staff. Full week of fall break is October 5th through the 9th, 2026. K-12 parent-teacher conferences will be held midweek, October 20th, 21st, and 22nd. Monday and Friday of that week will be full school days for all schools. Pre-K parent-teacher conferences will be held September 21st through October 2nd and April 19th through April 30th by appointment only. Veterans Day falls during the week, so Wednesday, November 11th, will be a student holiday. And the short week schedule will only be observed at the high school during the week of Thanksgiving and the week of first semester exams. Winter break includes 3 weekends, and the semesters are evenly divided 90 days and 90 days. And the last contract day for teachers is Thursday, May 20th, and this is a full day for staff. With that, I would take any questions or...
Well, if I recall, we had a lot of conversation and discussion about this calendar. This was the one that I believe that was originally presented with an uneven
85.
semester break.
85.
And there was a lot of back and forth. We went back to our teachers and our staff to get more feedback on that uneven break. And we finally landed on this 90 days, which consensus said was the way to do this thing. And I think what we normally do, what we mainly try to do. And I would just remind maybe even the new board members, what we try to do with these preliminarily approved calendars is not make any major changes unless there is some compelling reason to do so, because the reason we preliminarily approve them is so that parents can make plans a year in advance for vacations. So just with that little intro and what I remember about the discussion from last year, I can be quiet now.
Well, and I recall from that same conversation, one of the comments that stood out to me was that we are at a slight disadvantage in recruiting, just because anyone new who is coming in is cutting their summer in half. But I assume there's really not a lot we can do about that, and we're pretty much on par with other Southern Arizona districts. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Yeah, there's not much difference between when we start and when they start. Although who knows when they bring their people back. We don't know
Right.
that, but.
Gina, if you have anything, just wave. I know. Okay. Of course. Okay. We- Are there any other comments about this calendar? Let's go ahead and take a motion then. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Okay.
anybody got it?
I move the governing board approve the 2026-2027 school year calendar as presented.
Motion, may I have a second?
Second.
Having a motion and a second to approve item 4.1. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Aye. Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. And we can start our discussion of item 4.2, which is the initial review of the 2027-2028 school calendar. It's our first reading, and again, it's Westover.
Yes. So as Vice President Jackson explained, this is actually our very first review of 27-28, which means we are giving us 2 readings to take a look at this calendar. It has absolutely been patterned after the 26-27 calendar that you just approved. So some of the key points to this, I'll review here real quickly for you. The new teachers report to work on Wednesday, July 21st. Returning teachers on Tuesday, July 27th. The first day of school is Monday, August 2nd. Elementary early release and middle school late starts will be observed during the first week of school. The high school would begin at 8:35 a.m. and observe a regular day rotating schedule. The last day is Wednesday, May 17th, and it is a half day for students and a full day for staff. Full week of fall break, October 4th through the 8th. K-12 parent-teacher conferences will be held midweek, October 19th, 20th, and 21st. Monday and Friday of that week will be full school days for all schools. Pre-K parent-teacher conferences will be held September 20th through October 1st and April 17th through 28th by appointment only. And Veterans Day will fall during the week on Thursday, November the 11th, and it will be a student holiday. Short weeks will only be observed at the high school during the week of Thanksgiving and the week of first semester exams. Winter break includes 3 weekends again, and the semesters are additionally evenly divided 90-90. And the last contract date for teachers is Thursday, May 18th. This is a full day for staff. This calendar, just so you're aware, it was fully shared with our administrators in October, which then principals took out and shared with their sites. Some actually gave them an opportunity to vote because I did present 2 calendars to them. One that pushed the start date back a little bit.
But it's split, so it's split the winter
weeks.
break. So we'd get out on Wednesday and come back on a Wednesday rather than a Friday and a Friday, but then it.
It would be a 2-weekend break instead of a.
Yes,
Yes.
2 weekends and.
Well, that's good.
And we did, we had some feedback from each site on this, but overwhelmingly, keeping the calendar pattern the same tends to be the favorite. So we did give them an opportunity for that prior to bringing it to you this evening, but with that, I would take any questions, comments.
I have a question. I don't know why I didn't notice this before, and I'm putting you on the spot, so if you don't know the answer, that's fine. But for that, the conference week, where it's half days, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, but Monday, Friday are full days, do you know, are you seeing a lot of student and/or teacher absenteeism on those Monday,
No, which is why we went to this.
Why we did it, yeah.
This is why we went to it midweek, because if we had the half days on a
Yeah.
Thursday, Friday, or Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, if they had their conferences on Wednesday, they wouldn't come on Thursday, Friday. So now, having it with Monday and Fridays being full days, it has reduced that greatly.
We
So
did
our
look into
experiment
that
was
last year.
successful.
But it comes up, someone will go, why are we doing it this way?
This is why.
Luckily, I have that history.
A question on this calendar, because you mentioned it was shared out and feedback was solicited, the votes came in and really were in favor of this. Was there any specific negative feedback about this calendar?
I think the biggest concern is just the early starts.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, it definitely almost, it's a half a month of May that we get out rather than, you know, right up to that holiday in May. So I think you just get out sooner, and you get an earlier start, but other than
It is
that,
really early out. As
Well, I
opposed
think
to
there's
like
also
Memorial Day.
concern as administrators of releasing too soon in December. Because while we may be finished, many of the parents are not. So it becomes a childcare issue as well, when you're releasing too soon in December, which is why we proposed another calendar where they would go into that next week until the 22nd. But that was not as popular. So.
and you're coming back, you know, the holiday is being observed on a Saturday, January 1st, and then you're coming back on that Monday.
Oh, right.
So
You don't
that's
usually-
why we tried the adjustment to see, pushing it closer to the holiday in December and then a little further back. But overwhelmingly, they preferred this model.
Well, and I would imagine that our community schools folks are gearing up to help fill in those days like they do.
Correct.
With fun activities for parents who need places for their kids to be, so.
And this will come back to you
In 2 weeks.
in 2 weeks.
Yeah, this is
Then
informational.
again next year.
Any other questions right now for this evening? Anyone?
Any changes that you guys would like to see?
This will come back in 2 weeks for our preliminary approval, and then a year from now for final approval.
I will add, no one caught this, but there is a typo on
She's
the
confessing.
August.
You don't have to confess.
Well, at that August date where it says the 4th, it is actually the 2nd, so we'll make sure that that gets corrected on the bring back.
Oh, I see.
Just so you're aware, the calendar, the color coding is correct, the words to the left of it need to be corrected, so
I
we'll make
see.
sure
Oh,
that
that's
comes
still
back correct.
reflecting maybe the later start of Wednesday.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 2 items under discussion and reports this evening. Our first item is 5.1, CFSD Assessment Program and Arizona's A through F Accountability System Report. We welcome Justin Robinson to our, to the front of the room to help us understand the assessment and accountability report. Mr. Robinson is our Director of Student Data. Thank you for being here. Okay, take your time.
Ms. Maymer, did you get the presentation that I sent you? Okay. You're welcome.
Great.
Well, hello.
Hello.
It's been a few months.
Thanks for coming back, bringing us good news.
Hopefully.
You're gonna put something back there? I'm gonna scoot over. This'll work.
So much of this is already in the assessment report. This is just kind of a way to display it in a way that's easy to see for you all in the room. So basically, we'll start off with the assessment report, which covers our state achievement assessments along with other assessments that are part of the A through F accountability system as well. And to start off, we'll just go ahead and start off with state achievement test because that's the biggest component of the accountability system overall. And to start us off, we'll look at science, specifically the science assessment. So looking at the data on here, a couple of things stand out. If we look around here, we can see that our average of all of our students, we've had about 57% proficient for the last 3 years. We've kind of been stagnant in that area overall. Now, of course, this is, when you compare it to the state, that's still quite high, but 57% is not where we want to be overall as a district on the science test. So it's just something to kind of be aware of. You'll also notice that our fifth graders have kind of declined over those 3 years, where the other two 8th and 11th graders have gone up slightly, though still below that fifth grade group overall. Normally when I give you this report, I give you information about the size of the demographics as well, so you can kind of see what those look like in there. So when you see, groups of less than 50, those are able to swing wildly, basically. But an additional group that's been included this year, just because this data is provided to us by the states, is chronically absent students. So I've included some of their data in here as well. Note that chronically absent students only cover grades 1 through 8, at least as far as the state tracks. So that's why it doesn't say 11th graders here. So that's defined as missing more than 10% of a school year, which would be 18 days. They've missed more than 18 days, excused absences or unexcused absences. So just so you can see the performance of that group as well. In the report, of course, this data is also presented visually, so in case that's easier to see how that decline is happening for that fifth grade group, slight rise for that 8th and 11th grade groups.
So this is the data that we use to set the achievement goals or the performance by the year of 2030. This is the data that we've used for that.
These percentages are basically the top 2 out of the 4 proficiency levels, is that correct?
Correct, yes. So this would be proficient and highly proficient. So passing is what we'll define that as. Okay. Yep. Looking at our subgroups here a little bit as well, we do see that there was a little bump in that SPED group. Still low, but kind of a noticeable bump, and you'll see that kind of throughout this presentation as well today. But that, for the most part, covers it for science. There's not a lot of information to give there. We can't talk about growth and things like that, but I want to pause after each assessment in case there's any clarifying questions you may have. Okay, we'll move on to math. So presenting the math data about the same. We're still kind of stagnant around that 57% passing rates on math at the district level. You can see that it seems to start higher at the elementary levels, especially around grade 4, and then it kind of tends to taper off as you go down the line. We did see some notable increases though. We have our income eligible, and our SPED groups had a significant jump. Again though, when you look at that visually compared to all the others, those are still quite low, but it is good to see that there's at least some movement happening with those groups. Something new to the report this year is when we're looking at data this way, we're looking at the 4th grade group. That's not the same 4th graders 3 years in a row. We're looking at different kids each time. So sometimes it's good to look at the diagonal, basically. And so that's what this table represents, is that data change. So you're looking at the cohort or the graduating class, when they get to that point, and how they're progressing on here. So a couple of small things about that we can see on here. We saw that the jump from 5th grade to 6th grade was kind of hard for these cohorts that are showing that data. Whether that's getting used to middle school, that might be part of it. However, it should be noted that we also get about 18% of new to district students in 6th grade. So these are students who have not been in our system the whole time, so that might be a factor. And then they get used to it as they move up through the grade levels possibly. So that's something that could be there. Additionally, we don't see that same exact pattern happening from 8th grade to 9th grade. So the jump from middle school to high school, we can see in one class it did drop, but the other class rose. So we're not seeing that pattern there from the very limited amount of cohorts that we have available to view this from. You'll notice for this particular sheet, we've included 4 years of data. That's representing the 4 years of data we've had for these particular assessments. We've been using these assessments for 4 years in a row. So we'll possibly include 5 years so we can kind of see how these cohorts are tracking over the lengths of at least the tests as they currently are. Next, we have some growth data. So if you recall, growth is basically a measurement of how a particular student did to other students that had the same score the previous year. So how they sort of moved up. And so when we're talking about positive growth rates, I'm looking at students who demonstrated average or high growth. So you have 3 categories: low growth, average, and high growth. Gina, Jeff. Right now I'm on slide 14. You're welcome.
But those are some pretty nice growth numbers.
They can be, and there's been talk about what is considered to be a good growth for a school district. It seems to jump around between the 70 to 80% range. It's not expected that you would have 100% usually. So being that 78% range is good. The idea from part of the act of measuring growth from the state's perspective is that it's usually growth is meant to be a leading indicator, where proficiency is a lagging indicator. So you might see the growth happen before they actually get to where they're supposed to be at. And we can kind of see that the subgroups that don't perform that well typically, so on the bottom here we talk about the EL and SPED subgroups, they had a large amount of growth this last year compared to the previous year. So they were 61 and 66 the previous year, and now they're up to 71%. And that might kind of pertain to that jump we saw in those SPED groups. Even though they still have a low proficiency, there was a jump there. Any questions on math performance? So ELA, if we're looking at our goals as a district, ELA is the one that's the closest to meeting our goals overall. We have a 71% proficiency, but again, that's still pretty stagnant over 3 years. The goal is to move that up. We did see grades 7 and 9 show a notable increase. We also saw that same jump with our SPED subgroups, jumping up a little bit more than they have in previous years compared to others. And I didn't mention this on the math one, but we see the usual gender divide that we typically see in math and ELA. The boys usually do better in math, the females usually do better on ELA. That seems to hold steady over those years. So again, seeing that kind of jump there. And as far as the ELA with the grade levels, you can see these are all relatively similar. It doesn't seem to be going down over time. In fact, you can see it kind of peaks a little bit at the high school level for the ELA test. 4th grade, though, continues to be sort of an anomaly in terms of where kids tend to perform really well, and then it kind of tapers off a little bit, but at least it goes back up for high school. Looking at the data by cohort, where we can see that spike again for 4th grade, you can see that 4th grade seems to be high, and then it drops off on 5th grade. But then we see that steady improvement as they go from 8th grade to the high school level, usually ending a little bit higher, or at least closer to what 4th grade achievement levels seem to be for ELA. Going over to our growth, we have a couple of notable things here. Again, we have our SPED. Oh, did you have a question?
No, just let Gina know what slide.
Oh, sorry, slide 25 now. So unlike the math one, the SPED and EL subgroups actually had kind of a little bit lower of a growth on ELA compared to math one. This would make sense for ELs, of course, where they're learning English, so they typically perform worse on the English learning assessment than they do sometimes on the math one.
Also, I think it's good to note with our students with disabilities, new kids test in late in the year, and they're still tested as a student with a disability, so we haven't had that targeted instruction, or they test out too. So it's a fluid group sometimes, so that can impact that.
And this pertains for ELs as well. When an EL tests proficient, they're taken out of the EL program, and so then their data is no longer included as an EL student on
Right.
here. So when the goal is for them to, of course, reach proficiency with English language, but then we potentially lose their data. In terms of how it's listed here, it might be a thing to track our ELs for at least 2 years or up to 4 years after they test proficient on their English language assessment to see how they're performing on state achievement assessments. So that's kind of a goal for the future and tracking that. So this covers the 3 subject areas for our state achievement assessments. I want to just again pause here if there are any questions on any of those 3 assessments before we move on to some of the other ones.
We have a couple. One, sort of stepping back from these specific results and recalling that last year there was an intentional change to the math program. And I am just curious, there's no scientific answer to this, but I assume that's going to impact math scores at some point. That will probably also carry over to science at some point, but not now. Is there a sense of, or is there already a visible impact?
So are we referring to the high school building thing in classrooms? I will come back to that. I think yes to a degree, but possibly not so much visible here, but you might see it in another place a little bit later.
My other comment was just I really like the cohorts approach to this. I recognize it's not perfect because you've got the influx both at middle and then presumably also at high school.
Yeah, high school it's close to, I think it's almost close to 33%.
It sounds right.
From ninth, it's very high.
And it's also a different assessment at
Yes.
9th and 11th grade.
True, yes.
But with that said, that seems like the best way to control for a similar group of kids and analyze them over
Yes.
longitudinal basis. So
Correct.
Thank you for that.
You're welcome.
I was just going to comment that it might be nice on the slide before this. For
This one?
these, the one before it, no, the bar chart,
Oh, sorry.
to put in what our goal is,
Can you, which slide is that
just
for
to
Gina's
see it
sake?
graphically.
We're right now on slide 19.
19.
Just
That's
for
good.
future.
No, that's, and it keeps our eye on the goal too.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
keeps everybody's eye on it. I think that's a good idea.
I will write it down. Okay. So moving ahead, we're going to jump into an assessment that is not new, but new to the assessment report, which is our AZELA and ALT-ELPA. AZELA stands for Arizona English Language Learner Assessment. ALT-ELPA is the Alternative English Language Proficiency Assessment, which is given to students who have severe cognitive disabilities. They would be taking, probably taking the multi-state alternative assessment for English language and math and science, and then they would take this one for English proficiency if they fell into those categories. So most of their students, though, are taking the AZELA as their English language proficiency assessment. So when students are taking their English, the AZELA, I'll just keep referring to the AZELA specifically, their performance is measured by these 4 language levels, basically. When they first take the AZELA as a placement test, when they register, they indicate that they have a language other than English spoken at home, they take the AZELA, and then they are given a proficiency level. If they test in anything other than proficient, then they're labeled as an English learner, they're given the supports they need, and they go through the program. So what we're looking at here on the next couple slides is how our students did in terms of how many students tested proficient on the AZELA on a given year. But this can be kind of important to keep in mind that, as Dr. Bartlett mentioned, when a student tests proficient on the AZELA, then they're done. They're out of the data. So unlike looking at a student for math, who we have a highly proficient student, they're going to probably test highly proficient for 3 to 4 years in a row that we're seeing their data.
Right.
That's not the case here. Once they're done, they're out. So we kind of lose that data. So looking at the data here, we can kind of see some number drop-offs. So if we're looking at the whole K-12 group, we can see that we had 37%. This is slide 28, by the way, Gina. We had 37% a few years ago, and then it dropped down to 27%, then 23% proficient. So these are the number of students who are testing proficient and then being moved out in a given year. So it's been dropping the last 3 years. And that could be caused by a variety of different things. It could be caused by we've gotten sort of an influx of ELs who are at a lower proficiency level. It could be that we have tested some kids out and they're out of the data, and the next wave of students testing proficiency hasn't happened yet. But of course, we would want that number to be higher overall. What this particular table doesn't show you is where are our students at now, or how, do we have a lot of kids who are in that intermediate? They're one away from being there. The next slide doesn't quite give all the answers, but it gives at least some information because it talks about growth and how are students moving. So, meaning if I say a student has moved one level, that means they've moved like from emergent to basic or basic to intermediate. They've moved one up. My next slide doesn't tell you which they're at, but it tells you how many kids did move. Because what we don't want is for students to be in the 0 group where they didn't move or they moved back. So we want to be aware of that. So slide 30 shows what % of students moved to various proficiency levels. And the 2 rows that I would really say to focus on is the very top row that says 0 proficiency levels, and then down at the bottom that says moved at least 1 proficiency level. Because we're not really expecting kids to move 3 proficiency levels. We can see we had 1 kid every year for 3 years. That's uncommon to happen.
Yeah.
We just need to see that there's been some movement. So unfortunately, this has been in a decline the last 3 years as well. We don't want to see more than half of our students didn't move. So that's something that's, needs to be looked at, and our English language learning team is, looking into this kind of information. They want to make sure that we're moving students forward. So that's just kind of something to be aware of. However, with that being said, our growth rate is higher than the state's significantly, and we'll see that when we get to the A through F accountability. So even though low, not great, this is not unusual compared to other schools in the state.
Just to make sure I'm connecting this to your previous statement, once a student reaches the level of proficient,
they're no longer
gone from this.
Right.
Correct. Yeah. So, this student who we know tested proficient because they went 3 levels is no longer included going forward. So it's not the same 1 kid. Yeah. So it's a volatile program in terms of when we're looking at the data, but what we would ideally like to see is on this slide, we'd like to see this number going up, because that would indicate that the next year we might see the proficiency levels going up. At least this particular cycle, we're not seeing that.
So, but as he said, our EL team is looking at this, and if a student tests out, they're still going to be monitoring then how they're doing for the next 2 to 3 years.
Correct.
So that we can track to see, are they maintaining or are they progressing in the proficiency level outside of their language issue?
If they are not, do they re-enter?
They can.
Okay.
It's uncommon, but that is built into the system that they can if need be.
Got it.
Which is part of the purpose that they must monitor them for at least 2 years. And that's been one of the big pushes as I've been working with the director for that team is how do we make sure we are identifying and tracking those kids over those 2 years so we're not losing that focus.
Yeah, perfect.
Because it also helps us track the success we've had with kids too.
Right.
Not just those who are falling behind, but it helps us track the success that we're having with the kids. So it's both.
Yeah. Any other questions on ELs? So that covers the main state level achievement or state level tests. We have our state achievement tests, our EL tests, which are factored in heavily into the A through F accountability system, which we'll get to in a few minutes here. But what I wanted to go over next are some assessments given at the high school level that still pertain to state achievement testing because they fall into our college and career readiness components. So these do have an impact on A through F accountability, but this is more strictly at the high school level because it affects high school schools. First, we'll talk about the ACT. Now, to be clear, when we were looking back on those earlier slides with English, math and science, English and math proficiency, that when we're looking at grade 11, that was the ACT. The data that's going to be talked about on slide 32, though, is not looking at just state achievement tests, because when we look at the accountability system, that's including any attempt that students had with the ACT, not just the state achievement version of it. So the numbers included in here, when you're looking at this data on slide 32, this is any attempt, which will mean that some students are on here 3 times because they are wanting to improve their ACT score. And they may have taken it as a 12th grader as well. So that's just what to be aware of here. So I have it broken down. ELA is a composite of the 3 areas above it: English, reading, and writing. STEM is a composite of science and math, and then the composite is a composite of all of them together. And you can see that our averages have remained fairly stable over these 4 years. It should be noted that this cohort 2026, has not graduated yet, because they're, who's going to graduate this year. These numbers can change over the course of this year if they take it as a senior. So these are as of October, end of October, when I pulled this data. But to kind of compare this to the far right, you can see the national average. Now, ACT doesn't give, here's how students performed in a given year. They take 3 years worth of cohorts that have graduated and say, here is the average of these 3 cohorts, and you should compare to this data. And you can see across the board, we are above the national average. And it should be noted that, of course, I did say our data is any attempt, but well over 90%, probably well over 95% of our scores are from the state achievement test, where when we talk about the national ACT average, that includes students who across the nation are just taking it electively, not as part of a state achievement test. So it's very possible that a lot of those scores are higher because these are students who are electing to do it, not being forced to do it. I think there's 11 states who use the ACT as their statewide achievement test. I might have the number wrong on how many, but it's not all of them. So there's a lot of students nationally who are not being required to take this. So that's something to factor in, that our scores are good, including all the students who didn't want to necessarily take it, they were required to take it. And then the next slide looks at a comparison to ACT Aspire. So when students take ACT Aspire in 9th grade, they are each given a predicted ACT score that says, hey, our prediction is if you have an average growth from 9th grade to 11th grade, this is what your predicted ACT score will be. They give that same predicted ACT score to the district that says, here's what your school's predicted ACT score will be, assuming average growth for all your students. So the data and this is slide 33, the data here that says ACT score, these are only including 11th grade scores based on the definition of the predicted score is by 11th grade. So I removed 12th graders from this part of the calculation. But there's really nothing bad to say about this slide. You can see across the board, CFSD students in 11th grade exceeded the predicted ACT score that they were given as 9th graders. Or at least, as a collective, as a district. And going back to the conversation about math, a shift in mathematics, the building thinking classrooms, that was started in, I think it was last school year and part of this school year. So this group, that cohort 2026, had some time with that shift before taking the test as 11th graders. And you can see the sort of the change here. Cohort 2026 had a much lower ACT Aspire score, but they had a big change and brought themselves up much closer to that previous cohort. So there was a lot of growth that happened there for that particular group, and that may have been a factor in that change. Any questions on ACT?
So that change is something that we would keep an eye on this over the next few years to sort of see that impact roll out.
Yes, as long as we have ACT Aspire. I know we're due for new assessments soon, and they have very clearly articulated that ACT Aspire
will be out. They'll be looking for something new. So
Makes some sense for the State Board of Education to standardize these tests and stick with a test.
yeah, they typically have 7-year contracts. The downside with ACT Aspire, and one of the reasons they want to get rid of it, is it's no longer supported by ACT.
Well,
They contract that out through to Pearson, the company that gives the ASA platform. So it might be replaced with pre-ACT, I think is their main ACT keys possibly. So if they stick with ACT, I'm sure we'll probably see a different ACT pre-assessment of sorts. But we'll probably have at least one more year of.
It just makes it hard to look at longitudinal data when you're using different
Yes, it does.
instruments.
Yes.
Okay. All right.
This is pretty remarkable, right? Like the assumptions that are made between the predicted ACT score to the actual ACT score presumably are pretty rock solid and based on a huge sample of data. So the fact that we're exceeding that expected change says a lot about the high school level instruction.
Yes, it does.
And a full point on the ACT it's a lot.
Big,
Hard to
yeah.
get that.
Okay. So moving on to slide 34, we're going to shift to talking about the PSAT. This is a good time to talk about this since we just honored some National Merit Scholars, because the PSAT is the National Merit Scholarship Qualifying Test, the NMSQT. So that's one of the primary reasons we have been giving it as a district. While this one does not directly affect state accountability, its successor after this, the SAT, does. And if you recall, this year is the first year that the high school is also has given the SAT as well, which will play into that state accountability system a little bit as well. So we'll give some numbers on that here. But first, I just wanted to show you kind of where our numbers were of students who have been taking the PSAT. Unlike the ACT as a state achievement test, this is a purely elective test for our students, so it is not a population sample, it's an elective sample of our students. And you can see it's gone down over the past 3 years. And if we're looking at data for this school year, we had in October, the end of October, right around parent-teacher conferences, we had only about 307 students take the PSAT. So it continues down into fall 2025 as well. I don't think this is necessarily problematic, because I think more and more families are knowledgeable that these college entrance exams are not required typically to get into college anymore. So our students are typically taking this because they want to take that National Merit Scholarship, try to enter into being a National Merit Scholar, or they just want to try it out. But I think less of our students are doing it as a necessity, because if they don't need to take the test, the SAT, to get into the U of A, they don't necessarily need to take the PSAT. Not to mention, we've had the ACT as a state achievement test for several years. They're aware that that is equally usable as a college entrance exam. So that's probably factors into why those numbers are going down, because it's definitely advertised to our students. They're aware it's there. So you can also see our scores compared to the global average, quite a bit higher. And then if we were to actually look at the benchmarks that appear for these, because seeing a score without any context, is that a good score? This gives a little bit more detail for the evidence-based reading and writing. This would be on slide 36. Yeah, thank you. The evidence-based reading and writing and our math benchmarks. You can see again, we are outpacing that global average by quite a bit, especially in math. You see those math ones are close to double, if not double in some cases. And then looking at the ELA, over 90% of the students who take this in CFSD have met the benchmark. That's really high. Again, though, not a population. These are kids who are choosing to take the test. So it would be different if it was a population exam, but it's just something to be aware of.
Is that same, when we talk about this from a benchmark point of view, does that also apply to the Arizona and global? You never call
Yeah.
Okay.
Sorry, repeat your question.
Yeah,
Sorry.
so like basically when we were looking at the ACT, you kind of made that point that some of the global stuff might be inflated.
Correct.
Is that the case here as well?
Yeah, so I mean, some school, I want to say University High, I think they require all their students to take the PSAT. So I mean, some just school districts might require all students. So it's, you know, correct. And we have the opposite situation here.
Right.
We have students electing to take it, not required, where the global average includes elected students and you know, schools that require all their students, populations,
What
Oh.
sites.
would be the rationale of a school requiring their students to take the SAT?
The SAT?
This one.
Yeah,
The SAT?
I think sometimes you'll see it offered as a sophomore grade test, because it is one of the only assessments that's offered at the 10th grade, which does give them some opportunity.
Just some
to
information on
test,
how your
yeah.
students are performing.
Yeah, and some of the programs that are built out there to really college prep programs want to highlight that their students, you know, are all
college
taking
ready.
this test.
Which
And
makes sense that
Yeah.
University High requires
Yeah.
it.
Yep.
And probably beefs up the number of AP scholars or, national merit.
National merits.
Yeah. Semifinalists that they have and then finalists as well.
And you can see we do have a lot of 10th graders who do take the exam. And if you kind of looked at this slide, you can see that the 10th graders typically perform better. But again, these are 10th graders who are electing to take it at a 10th grade level. And they're usually the ones who are in the advanced math class already. They're in the honors English class. So, you know, it's not surprising that they will be performing better. And their cutoff for the benchmark is also lower as well. I should mention that. Factoring in the grade level piece. Any other questions on PSAT? Okay. Moving on to slides 37 and 38, we're going to talk about the STAMP assessment. This again factors into the accountability piece for the high school and dealing with this Arizona Seal of Biliteracy. So the high school uses the STAMP test, which is the standards-based measure of proficiency. It's a terrible acronym basically, but that's what we use because it's, one, it's inexpensive for our students to take, and it has a wide variety of languages that we can test in for our students. So you can see 4 years worth of data here on what languages our students tested in. So the table on the left shows what languages were tested in a given year. And the table on the right is showing what languages our graduating cohorts earned the Seal of Biliteracy in each year. So a couple different things to take note of here. The numbers did go down this last year. That's not necessarily unexpected though. If we look sort of up here at our Chinese simplified numbers, they dropped off quite a bit as well. There was a large push this year from our high school Chinese programs for all of the Chinese 3 and AP Chinese students to take this exam. And then that would mean that the next year, those kids who are in Chinese 3 would not take it again in AP Chinese. So that would, you know, they got saturated basically at that point. So those numbers were probably going to sit a little bit closer to that in general. And you can see with that same note though, even though those dropped off, if we look at the graduating cohort, the numbers rose because a lot of those students, you know, finished the program at that point and graduated. So our numbers across the bottom here are showing that we have increased the number of students earning the Seal of Biliteracy over these 4 years. We expect that number to either grow or stay probably around where it's at right now. Because students can take the test at any grade level. And so if they take it, you know, in 9th grade, it'll take 3 years to show up on the chart on the right.
And these are numbers of test takers.
Numbers of,
On the left?
on the left, number of test takers
necessarily
in
pass.
language.
Not necessarily passing rate.
Not necessarily passing rates, correct. And if they tested more than once, so if a student does not pass, they're allowed to take the test again, but they were only included once for a unique language attempt. So if they took it 3 times, they were only included once. However, if they took 2 languages, because we have a couple triliteracy students out there, they are included for each language that they attempted. Okay.
So the smattering of other languages like German and Polish are people who
native.
On their own have pursued that, or
Yes,
perhaps
or
as
their native speakers.
speaker.
Yeah, so I should clarify, we're looking at the numbers on the left are just stamp test attempts. The numbers on the right for earning the seal of biliteracy, a component of the seal of biliteracy is demonstrating a non-English language proficiency and English proficiency. So we'll have students take the, our students, native Spanish speakers, who will take the Spanish test, do well, but they still have to demonstrate their English proficiency on using some other assessments, which is usually going to be the ACT is one way that we show that, unless they're an English learner, in which case their Azella showing proficient shows their English proficiency. So we do have a lot of native foreign language speakers who will take these tests as well. Yep. Any other questions?
These numbers have increased significantly
Yes.
since beginning.
Yes.
Since the beginning. I think we
Yes.
had 15 in our first cohort. Now we're at 67. So
And a benefit of this program is this can honor some students who would otherwise not get honored for some other type of achievement, some other academic achievement. So this is, a feather in their cap that they can leave at the end of the year. And plus, on their transcript, it shows they're bilingual.
They've outgrown our board recognition.
yes, they have.
We can't
They
invite
get
them
a
in
seal
anymore.
on their diploma and everything.
But they're going to be recognized at the
They're
high
going to be
school.
recognized at the
Yeah.
high school. They're going to
Yeah.
have a recognition ceremony.
Correct. Okay. Any final questions on STAMP? All right. And again, we talked about this during the awards.
Hold on.
Yes.
Correct. Yes.
Correct.
Agreed.
So we honored some scholars for AP exams today as well. And moving on to slide 42, we're looking at how students performed on our AP exams. And we have a very large table coming up that if you have your own version of the assessment report, that might be easier to view. On this first slide, though, is easy. Looking at 6 years worth of data, normally we only show 5 for the AP exams, but I included a 6 year because it's probably a good idea to look at how COVID affected our numbers a little bit for the AP program, so we can kind of see. This would be slide 43. So you can see across the board here, our numbers have been increasing. The numbers of students taking exams, the number of exams themselves, the number of students who had at least a 3 or higher on one of their exams, increasing over time. I mean, this is nothing but good news slide. We saw a small dip after COVID, ended into the hybrid learning model. There was a large shift in how they were giving exams at that time. So, it was understandable that dropped, but that's been fully recovered and keeps growing. I asked our test coordinator at the high school on November 3rd what the numbers were looking like for this school year, if you're just kind of curious. And right now they're at 1,400 exams intended to be tested for this school year, and that will probably grow because in second semester we have students who register for the second semester AP Micro and AP Government exams as well. So we're probably going to be 1,450 or if not higher. I mean, some students decide to drop, some students add late, but we'll see those numbers then. Yeah. So then we look at this table on slide 44, which is a little bit hard to read because it's so huge, but we have a lot of things going on here. At the very bottom, we can see that the percentage of exams that were a 3 or higher has increased over the last 3 years. That's a little bit different than what the previous slide said. The previous slide talked about students with with an exam of 3 or higher, where this one's talking about the actual number of exams overall. So that has increased up to, looks like about 87%. Of the courses that we offer, 12 had 90% of their students score a 3 or higher. And that may be higher still. You'll notice there's a couple of courses that have dashes because there weren't enough students in that for me to show you that data. So there's 10 or less students in that group. So that data was omitted. But some of those may be higher as well. So at least 12 had their students score 3s or higher. And then a new piece of data that was added, that I added in here this year, is to give you a sense of what % of our students actually take the exam if they're enrolled in the course. And you can see that 16 of the 26 courses had over 90% of their students take the exam. Where that seems to fall off happens to be in our Spanish Lit and our English Lit classes, and same with the government class. A factor in that from being the former test coordinator at the high school, that I know happens is students oftentimes cannot, like if they take the English Lang exam, that will give them credit for college for an English class, but then the passing the English Lit class would give them the same credit. So they can't, it doesn't benefit them to take it the second time. So they're choosing as seniors not to take it at that point. So it's not unusual to see those numbers drop off for those second versions of those
And it
classes.
does cost for each of the exams.
Yeah, it's getting, each year it goes up about $1. We're gonna break the $100 per exam soon, I'm sure.
Is that what it is now, about $100
It,
per exam?
I assume it's like 90, I don't know for sure right now, but it was 97, I think,
That's a lot.
last I did.
Still an amazing value compared to the.
That's
Yeah,
true.
that's true.
To get the credit.
But-
That's how it should be promoted, you're right.
But we definitely have some families that, or students that will take 6 exams in a year.
Yes.
That's a lot.
But if you remember, not too long ago, we were having a problem with kids taking the AP classes, but not the exam.
Right, I
That's
remember
right.
we were
So that
talking
has
about
been-
making it mandatory.
Right, and
Yes.
it looks like we have improved that quite a bit.
Absolutely.
Is there any, is there any mechanism to provide financial support or underwriting to students who may want to take an AP exam but have a financial hardship?
So students typically on who are
Free
free and
and
reduced lunch, they do not have to pay for their exams, and we get fully reimbursed.
Okay.
We're not charged for those exams. The state pays that. So we have lots of students who do qualify for that, and that's true for STAMP, and that's true for PSAT as well.
What about any families who may not qualify for free and reduced but still
We
may be
have,
choosing not to
I
take
have,
a
and I'm
$100
sure our current
test?
coordinator have put in place pay over time mechanics if need be in severe cases. It can always be investigated. Families have reached out if they have questions about that, and we try to push them to the appropriate sources for that.
And what's the deal with microeconomics? Why don't they want to take that exam?
Yeah, so, you can see on our last piece here, if we're comparing ourselves to the global, every single, at least for the exams that I can show you the information for, we surpassed the global average on all those. Microeconomics is the one exception, has continued to be the exception for the last couple of years. We were doing the macroeconomics test several years ago, and we switched to the microeconomics course. That continues to be one where a lot of students don't want to take it, and I don't know if that's partially because they already got a credit from another exam or not. I don't know.
It could also be because it's a semester-long course. And so if they're taking it, let's say in second semester, you have a reduced time period to prepare for a class that's in second semester that's being tested in May. And maybe you took government first semester, so you've been more prepared for that assessment, so they might choose the economics or the government.
The other flip side of that is we have students who take it in first semester, and then they have to go an entire semester with zero practice.
Right, yeah.
So it's not uncommon to see students say, hey, I want to go ahead and drop my enrollment in that test, basically.
Gina might have had a comment as well.
Yes. Yes.
I
and-
don't understand the. Oh, I see. I see. I see. Right. Right. Right.
Makes sense.
And
does make sense.
it is a senior class as well. and we tend to see our biggest jump in AP exams being tested happening at the junior year.
Sure.
And then they want to take it easy on the senior year. You know, some of these students are taking their AP exam on their last day and missing out on the fun activities that their other senior friends are doing. So these are things they factor in, for sure.
The number of AP classes and tests we've offered gone up over the last few years too. I don't recall psych and
Yeah, so psych started last year, and I think I had a number here off to the side. So, I'm sorry, I'm having to read my own little screen here from the distance. AP Psychology, we had 286 students take it last year. That was a very popular class for students to enroll in. As of November 3rd, for this year, we have 265 students planning to take the exam. So it's still a high number, a very popular junior level class. Yes, and we also had the AP pre-calc, and that's a very attractive one, because if you did not take an advanced math class anywhere else in our continuum, you could not take AP calculus, because you wouldn't hit that. You'd stop at pre-calculus. So AP pre-calculus really offers a lot of our students to take an AP math class and test at this point. So that was a great thing to introduce, and our students do well in it.
I can connect this to a recent Parent Square post from Julie Farberick promoting some of these same numbers and successes, and then a specific shout out to Mr. George in his first year AP pre-calc with a 100% passing rate. But a lot of these same numbers have gone out to groups on Parent Square to celebrate these achievements. Just wanted to know.
As they should. Yes, it's wonderful. It is not easy. No.
Okay. And so this covers the assessment report portion of my time with you before we move into the A through F accountability piece. Any last minute questions on the assessments that we kind of have discussed here?
Anyone?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you for that very detailed report.
Yes. So let's move on to the A through F accountability system part. And so, Gina, we're on slide 51. So our different sites are graded on sort of slightly different scales, and we kind of talked about this last year during our study session. Of course, we have two new members here as well, so feel free to interrupt with questions if you're not so sure how some of these things work. And I don't expect all of you to remember our conversation from a year ago either. So our K-8 schools are measured on 4 components: proficiency, growth, English learners, and acceleration readiness. Our high school drops the acceleration readiness piece and focuses on graduation and college and career readiness, along with those other components as well. So there's a basic pie chart showing kind of what components take up the biggest chunk. You can see that growth is a big factor in K-8, whereas in 9-12, all pieces of the pie are almost equal to each other. So you had in your in the agenda, this grid basically. I'll break it down by indicator, so it's a little bit easier to read. But you're welcome to pull that up if you want to go back and look at things as we're speaking today. So to start off first, we'll look at proficiency, and we can kind of see on here how each of our sites did this year in terms of their proficiency score. Proficiency for all grade levels, K-12, is 30 points being the max. You can see that Ventana Vista this year was able to achieve that perfect score for proficiency. And our other sites are kind of at varying levels from there. So the proficiency component looks at the AASA, ACT, and the multi-state alternative assessment, English language, arts, and math results. It does not include science, and you'll notice it also does not include ACT Aspire. The state doesn't include ACT Aspire in this piece. So the way that proficiency works, if you recall, is that each test is assigned a value based on the performance level the student demonstrated. So if the student was proficient, that's given a value of 1. If they tested minimally proficient, that's given a value of 0, which is what we don't want. And then, of course, it can go higher than 1 if you are highly proficient. That gives the school a value of 1.3 for that particular test. So we add up all the values for all the math tests, all the values for all the English tests, and create a weighted average from that, and that's what the average proficiency piece is. So you'll notice on slide 57, we see for K-8 schools, though, there are 2 components here. So one is the standard calculation, which is basically what I just described. But then K-8 schools also have a possible stability version of this. And what that is the same calculation, except it's weighting it further by making our students who are 3-year full academic year students at a school count for 50% of that proficiency calculation. So for instance, let's look at middle school. 6th graders are not, because it's not counting their, how long they were in the district prior. It's only talking about at your school, how many years were you a FAE student, full academic year student. So a 6th grader can't be more than 1 at middle school. Your 8th graders are your only students who could be 3-year full academic year students. So for the most part, if we're assuming that all of our students were in middle school for all 3 years, 8th graders would make up 50% of the calculation, 7th graders a third, 6th graders a sixth. So that it gives an alternate version for how that proficiency score is calculated for middle schools, with the intent that you've had more time to affect students who have been with you longer. So that's what that possibility is for. And if you look at each site's scores up here, the score that's used is whichever one is higher. So if the stability is higher, that's used. If the standard's higher, that's used. And our middle schools this year, the stability was higher for both of them. So that's what was utilized for them. And I don't think either middle school or elementary schools, no. So that's just how that particular component is calculated.
A question on that?
Yeah.
Is that based on just the assumption that if you're an 8th grader, you've been there 3 years, or is it only for those who have been isolated to say you have actually been
You have actually been there 3 years.
Okay.
So we have 8th graders who fall into the 1-year
Exactly.
FAE as well. Yes,
Okay,
correct.
perfect.
Yeah, so every kid is assigned a 1 through 3, basically. And this is true for the K-5 schools, except a 3rd grader could be a 3-year FAE student at that, because they could have been there for a 2nd grade as well. So another piece of the proficiency component, though, is this percent tested component. Schools are required to test 95% of their students. So we're making sure that we're getting a good population sample size, and so that we're not hiding students who we don't want to test. We're supposed to test all of our students. So at least 95, but we really should be testing more. And so if you test 100%, that actually winds up boosting that average proficiency score up by about 5%. And you can see all of our schools test 99% or higher, and if it's not 100%, it's not for lack of trying. Our test coordinators really try for weeks to test every single kid. So we're talking about 1 or 2 kids that maybe were missed, and that's because we probably couldn't get them in for whatever reason. They were always gone when we try to test them. So just kind of give a visual here, we can see the high school tested 99.24%. That gave about a 4.5% increase. So you can see that they earned a 27.60, but if they tested exactly 95%, their score would have been down about a point and 1.2 from where it actually is. So it helps, and that can make a difference between an A or a B for a school. So it's really important for us to make sure that we continue to test as close to 100% as possible.
So the scores we see in row 1 proficiency standard
have that applied. I wish they would show it separately on the platform. They don't, and we can backwards calculate it, but yes, it's already pre-applied there.
Okay.
Yes. Okay. Any questions on slide 60 for proficiency?
Are you about to go to growth?
We are.
Could I ask a favor first?
Sure.
Could you go back to the one that showed the pie charts with the weighting
Yes.
levels? Because I'll take a picture of that
Sure.
so I have that in mind.
Actually, I'm not going on yet to growth. There are one additional note I thought we should point out. So we do need to be careful as we're talking about, because this is generally good information, but we need to remember that 30 points, which is the max score, does not mean 100% proficient. It's a weighted average, so we can see those numbers again here.
Okay.
You know, Ventana Vista scored 100% of the points, 30 points. But we want to also keep in mind, this is conversations we have with our principals, who then bring this down to their teachers, that good news scores in terms of what we see on the A through F indicators, but we also need to keep in mind what that actually means in terms of our total number of proficient students at a site. So slide number 63 kind of shows that sort of comparison of how many points did we score, what percent of the points did we earn, versus what points did they actually, or what percent of their students are actually proficient. So we don't want to lose sight of the fact that, Ventana Vista with their 30 points still has 24% of their students who are not yet proficient. And we need to make sure we're getting those students to proficient. Okay? All right. So now we'll go ahead and move on to growth.
Slide number?
This is slide number 65 as a start. So again, pointing out that growth is out of 50 points for K-8, but for high school it's out of 20. So when we look at that 17.41, it doesn't jump out as the high school did terrible. They're out of 20, so just keep that in mind. Again, this is only for ELA and math, for ASA and ACT, not ACT Aspire, and also not the multi-state alternative assessment, because there's not enough students statewide to calculate growth scores for that particular test. So they don't do that. So growth, again, as we talked about earlier in the assessment report, is a comparison of how students are doing at a particular or how they did on one year compared to how they did the next year, and how other students who were the similar score the previous year jumped. And if you want a visual, we can kind of quickly walk through what that looks like on this slide here, starting on slide 67. Let's just say we have a bunch of students who are all highly proficient in spring 2024. They had the same score. The next year, they take it again in spring 2025, and now they have different scores for that assessment. We go ahead and calculate what that change was. Some moved up, some moved backwards, and then we go ahead and order them so that they're in a decreasing order. Then we compare all those students' change to how they performed from one year to the next to all the other students in the state who had the same proficiencies or the same scale score in the spring 2024 year. And then we go ahead and give them a growth percentile. How did they perform compared to the other students who had that same score in the previous year? And those growth percentiles are assigned to growth categories then. So on slide 74, we see what these growth categories are, and that determines what growth group you're in. So every single grouping of students for different scores are measured against students who had the same. Now, the state doesn't say if it's exactly the same score or a range of 5 point, but the idea is they're being compared to students who scored similar to them in one year, and then how did they move? So it's always possible for a highly proficient student to show high growth, but it's possible they can go the other way as well. And just because you have low growth does not mean that you go back a proficiency level. You can still be highly proficient, and the reverse is true. Just because you scored highly proficient one year does not mean you moved up a proficiency level. You can still be at the bottom of that. So that's just a brief reminder of how growth works. So really what we're looking at is the percentage of students that demonstrated average growth, high growth, low growth, as we're moving through. So let me jump ahead here to slide number 80, which kind of gives a breakdown of how the weighted average component of growth is factored in. So a chart is used where on the left we see how they performed on their previous year assessment, and then what growth category they're in based on their current year assessment. And that cross-section shows the weight that is attributed to that student. So for instance, any student who demonstrates low growth adds 0 weight to the school's growth score. Average growth, 1 point. And then high growth kind of changes depending on what their previous level is. So a student who is minimally proficient and demonstrates high growth actually gives a large push into how many points are attributed for that student. So just a quick visual on slide 31. There we go. Kind of shows an idea of what this calculation looks like. So you might, if you have over here, about 20% of the school's students showed low growth. That 20%, 0 points. Where over here we had 4% of students who were minimally proficient with high growth. That'll be multiplied by 2, so that'll count as an 8% towards this bonus down here. So we get a weighted average that's brought up to be could be above 100 because of these numbers over here, but can get capped at 25 for each subject area. So like this 90.42 gets multiplied by 0.25 to give a score for that piece. The main takeaway though is we don't want low growth because that gives us 0 points. If we can reduce that low growth piece, the closer schools will get to getting their full growth points of 50 or 20, depending on the site level. So now we can go back and look on slide 83 to see how each school performed. And it shows a breakdown of how they did in growth for ELA and math. So for K-8, these would be out of 25. For the high school, this would be out of 10 for each of those to kind of see where they were at. And just like we talked about with proficiency, just because a school may earn 100% of the points for growth does not mean all their students had good growth. So a very similar chart here, we can see the percent of points the school earned. Orange Grove in this case, or sorry, Sunrise had the highest amount of points earned, but you can see that they still had 17% of their students demonstrating low growth. So these are numbers that are, sites are aware of and they're looking at, they're identifying who these students are because we want to make some change. And they're looking at, it's not just minimally proficient students they're worried about. We have highly proficient students who demonstrate low growth. So they give us points for the proficiency side, but 0 points for the growth side.
And you could theoretically, mathematically be highly proficient and still maintain a highly proficient status.
Correct, but low growth.
But be a low growth.
Correct, yep. And perhaps unfortunately, students don't get to see their growth scores. That is calculated after families receive their score reports from the state because that doesn't happen until they've gone through all their data and they have to measure every student against every other student in the state. So students don't see their own growth score, but it would probably be very enlightening for highly proficient students to see that they had low growth. Because the problems that you're facing with a highly proficient student with low growth, it's probably a different situation than a minimally proficient student with low growth.
But at the site level, they get all this granular data.
Yes, so they know exactly which students had low growth.
And I assume that they use that information.
That is
Yeah, we have students who we sometimes refer to as double zeros because they were minimally proficient and had low growth. So there was 0 for the proficiency side, 0 for the growth side. So that's another group to really target because they're kind of hurting in both areas.
I would imagine an intervention for a highly proficient low growth student looks remarkably different than an intervention for a
Yes.
Sometimes it's just a conversation.
right. Just say like
Yeah. Yes, I think I've had conversations with some counselors saying it might be good to pull them in and have that, show them that, because that might be a light bulb moment.
Yes.
And students go, oh, it's just another state achievement test. I know I'm going to do well. I'm just going to walk in and do without any preparation, without really taking it seriously. So sometimes it's motivation the school can do to really stress the importance of doing their best. Okay. Any final questions on growth? Okay. So the next piece on slide 86 is talking about our English learners. So we looked at the Azella test in the assessment report piece, and this is kind of looking at how that data factors into accountability. So again, this is worth 10% of schools' letter grade, regardless of the site level. And we can kind of see the points breakdown here. 4 of our sites earned 10 points, the high school earned 9, Canyon View this past year earned only 7 points, and then you'll notice Ventana Vista doesn't show anything. So just as a clarification that a school only earns points in the English language component is if they had at least 10 students test. Ventana Vista didn't have that many students that many English learners to apply for that, so they don't get any points for that category whatsoever. It's not really, it doesn't hurt them. It's not 0 points, and we'll come back to that at the very end. But again, this is using our Azella and Alt-ELPA tests. So a couple things to note. There's two components. The first, the top half on line 8 says English learner proficiency. This goes back to what we talked about at the very beginning of the assessment report for English learners, which is the percent of students who test proficient on, in the 24-25 school year. And how a school earns points is how their proficiency level, the percent of students who test proficient at their site compares to the state. If it was greater than the state average, then they got 5 points. If it was less than the state average, then it's a graded system based on how many standard deviations below the state average that was. So as you can see Canyon View, for instance, got a 2 for that. It should be noted, though, that Canyon View's English learner numbers doubled last year. So they probably had a lot of students who were coming in at that first proficiency level and have not had, enough time to really move up. So it's not uncommon that that can happen periodically if there's a surge of English learners who tested in that particular year. It also should be pointed out that for English learners, this is not just, when we talk about state achievement tests, those were grades 3 through 5 at the elementary level, but the English learner component is K-5 because they're being tested even as kindergartners. Okay. So also to go with this, we do have the growth component for English learners as well. This is very similar to what we talked about earlier. We're measuring how many of our students moved up levels, and a score is calculated for that. Basically a English learner growth score. To give an example here, if a kid jumps 2 proficiency levels, the number is multiplied by 2, and we get a weighted average basically for that. And as long as that number is greater again than the state, that's a full 5 points. If it's less, the same tapering off occurs. So all of our schools that it applies to, their growth score was higher than the state, they all got those points. Okay. So any questions on English learners? And again, several of our schools did earn the full 10 points for this. But if you recall back in the assessment report, we did have numbers that we weren't necessarily loving in terms of the percent of students testing proficient. So there's things to improve, but comparatively to the state, or as a district, we're doing better than the state is in this regard. Okay. So now we jump into sort of a small split between high school and the K-8 schools. So on the acceleration readiness piece on slide 94, we get a sort of a menu of different areas that a K-8 school can earn points in. So this indicator is out of 10 points, but it's possible to earn up to, I think, 14 points or 12 points, but it gets capped at 10 points. You also notice that there are some pieces on here that only apply to certain sites. So the grade 8 part would, of course, only apply to the middle schools, and the grade 3 would only apply to the elementary schools. But just a quick glance at what these all entail again as a reminder. For line 11, the grade 8 math performance, this is looking to see if a site has improved the number of students who are demonstrating highly proficient in math and reducing the number of students who test minimally proficient in math. They get 2.5 points if they increase that highly proficient percentage and another 2.5% if they lower their minimally proficient percentage. And so you can see both Hesper and Orange Grove this past year earned 2.5 points, which means they only got one of those. For both of those sites, they improved the highly proficient rate. This is one where even if if you make a 1% change, that can earn you the points or lose you the points. So if they dropped back 1%, that loses the points. It's not a big shift that you have to make, or to either gain points or lose points. So they really need to kind of monitor it. So very similarly, elementary schools have a similar version, but it pertains to English language proficiency, or sorry, English language arts proficiency scores. They want to reduce their minimally proficient rate, and if they do, they earn 5 points. And you'll notice there is a cutoff they talk about here as well. If they get below 12%, they automatically get all those points. The intention here at the elementary level is, that's where we start looking at the oral reading fluency kind of piece for move on with reading. And so by reducing the minimally proficient rate for English language arts, more of our students are, proficient with their reading. So those two are kind of tied together on lines 11 and 12. Feel free to jump in if you have a question on either of those. The next one, I'm going to skip down to line 14 and talk about subgroup improvement. So if we think back to the assessment report, we're reporting on how all those subgroups were doing. This is kind of the same thing. If their proficiency, the percent of students who tested proficient in each subgroup, so we're talking about race subgroups, male, female, EL, SPED, improved at all, any amount, they earn 2 points. And so there's 13 subgroups that are measured, 2 points for ELA possible, 2 points for math possible, so there's really 52 points they could earn here, but they can only get 6. But this is a good area that the schools can see which subgroups need that attention, and they can kind of monitor that. So that's not shown on here necessarily, but they can view that data, even for groups that have a very small number of students.
So any one of those listed subgroups, if they show that proficiency
improvement,
you get
2 points. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. Correct. And you can see, I think every one of them got their full 6 points.
There's a
But
lot of different subgroups to give them the opportunity to earn those.
Correct.
So.
Correct. And this doesn't tell you how many. I mean, it could be that one site got exactly 3, another site got 10 subgroups. This doesn't tell you here, but the sites do know that information. Going down a little bit further, we have the special education inclusion component. This is just measuring if students who are in special education are participating in general education classrooms for more than 80% of their day. If they are, or if that's higher than the state average rather, then they get the full points for that. And so we can kind of see that some of our schools this year did not get that component. We have some students who have different needs and they're not in the classroom necessarily the full day, but the goal is to get them into a general education classroom as much as possible. And then this brings us to our last one of acceleration readiness, which is going back up a little bit to line 13 on slide 100, which is the chronic absenteeism piece. So this is, again, that formal definition, missing more than 10% of the school year, which is 18 days. For clarity, this is only including grades 1 through 8. Kindergartners are not included in this component. And all absences are included, whether they are excused or not. With some exceptions, which would be for kids who have a chronic illness, there's ways to exclude them from that data. But the goal is to reduce the number. If you reduce the number of students who are chronically absent, you get the full 2 points, unless you can bring it below 4%. Which, if we kind of look at our numbers from before the pandemic, so the 2018-2019 school year, you can see what our chronic absenteeism rate was at each of those sites. And then you look at this last year, and you can see that those numbers have roughly doubled. And they basically doubled right after the pandemic. The last 4 years have looked roughly the same for each site.
Which prompted the goal that we wrote for reducing the chronic absenteeism.
So while this only on the surface level seems to contribute to 2% of the accountability system, because it's only worth 2 points, it really does factor into a lot more. So I have some additional data here. So of the grade 1 through 8 students included in the measurement, 472 of them out of 2,800 were chronically absent. That would make up 1/6 of all grades 1 through 8 students were chronically absent the last school year.
Can
Can you define absent?
Any absence.
Any absence.
Any excused or unexcused, I think.
But
was
what,
Like
I think
class
of
or
absent
full day?
as an
All day?
entire day.
Generally, when we get start talking about the middle school levels, I don't know exactly how the calculation goes, but I think it does look at partial days
they do
possibly
like
as well.
period.
So 2 half-days would equal a full day, probably for the middle school level. I don't have the
But
exact,
2 half-days wouldn't equal 2
2 absent
absences.
I don't believe so.
It just adds up.
At the elementary level, they take more AM and PM attendance.
That's even worse. I mean, because I'm looking at some of those numbers that are like, 18, 19, 20%.
And-
But that's not just that you missed a class because you had a doctor's appointment in the morning. That doesn't count as an absence.
And we need to also realize that when we talk about missing 18 or more days, that doesn't mean they missed 18 days and stopped. We have plenty of students who miss far more than 18 days.
So again, that I'm clear, that's excused and unexcused.
Yeah, dentist
They could be
appointment.
on like a school trip for 3 days.
If it's a
and they-
school,
No.
if it's a school spot, like
Sponsored.
a
That's a
band trip
different
would not,
category.
yeah.
Right.
But you're gone for that all-day lacrosse game because you're in a club lacrosse team. That's not,
Okay.
that's an
Thank
absence.
you for that clarification.
If
If
you're
you're
at
sick for
state-
3 days.
That's an
But if you're
absence.
staying
Excused, yep,
over,
yep,
you're considered
correct.
present at school.
Yes, so yeah, 1/6.
Like the club kids that might tour with their club and they have,
Outside of school, yes.
right.
Yeah,
Correct.
It's not school, it's.
Right,
If I'm
okay.
playing club soccer and I'm missing, yes, that counts towards absences.
Correct. You're welcome, yeah. So of the failed ELA and math AASA tests in grades 3 through 8, 25% of those were from the chronically absent students. If we look at how our non-chronically absent students do compared to our chronically absent students do, we have a passing rate of 68% if you're not chronically absent, and a 47% proficiency rate if you are. So you're 31% less likely to pass if you're chronically absent. And we look at our minimally proficient numbers, 15% of our students who are there are tested minimally proficient, but that doubles if they're chronically absent. So you're twice as likely to be minimally proficient if you're chronically absent. So it's not really just 2% of the accountability system because this trickles all the way up to those earlier components considerably. Because these are students that we could maybe earn some points for if we could just have them in school. Okay. So that covers the acceleration readiness piece. Any final questions on this one before we move on to the high school graduation stuff? Okay. So jumping to slide 108, we are looking at the graduation component. So this is, of course, just for high school, makes up 20% of their letter grade. And there's 2 components for this. There's a graduation rate, looking at a 4 to 7 year graduation rate, which I can help clarify what that means. And then a graduation rate improvement component. A good thing to keep in mind is when we're talking about the graduation rates, we are not talking about cohort 2024, we're not talking about cohort 2025 that graduated last year. The graduation indicator lags by a year. So all this data that we're talking about is for cohort 2024 who graduated 2 years ago. There's a lot of things that schools have to do to clean up their graduation data and statewide, and so it takes a year to clean a lot of that information up. So it's measured back 1 year so that data can be cleaned up. So just keep that in mind. So the 4 to 7 year component looks at how our cohorts for the last 4 years, what their graduation rate is. So when we talk about a 7-year graduation rate, if we look at cohort 2021, we're including all graduates, even if they didn't graduate in 4 years. So we might have some students that took 7 years to graduate or 6 years to graduate. So that number increases over those couple of years if they took multiple years. Ideally, students are graduating in 4 years, but that is factored in, but it's a small component. They're given a much smaller weight the longer, the further removed away it is from the primary cohort that we're looking at. So the high school this year got above the 10 possible points that are possible, so they did well on this. You can see their graduation rate for the last 4 measured years here was over 90%, and improving.
When the Arizona Department of Education shows graduation rates in our school district, what figure are they using?
So they're always using purely cohorts, and
Four-year cohort?
depends.
Sometimes 5.
Yeah, but a lot of times 4-year cohorts. So it kind of just depends on what we're.
5 is usually what they refer to when they talk about
Yes, my
it.
brain is broken.
And if I remember this discussion from maybe the study session, the graduation cohort includes kids who started with us, but maybe didn't finish with us.
Because
Correct.
they moved.
Because
Not
they
because they
moved
didn't
and went to a
graduate.
different system.
But if they move into another school in the state, they are removed from there as long as we have the data to back that up and code them correctly.
That they moved to
And we know where they went.
out of the state, in the state, as long as we can, that's part of the cleaning up of the data.
Correct, yes.
Is we can show that this student moved away.
Yeah, so if we kind of look back at cohort 2023, which we can see a much lower graduation rate. If you recall, there was, I think it was 2 years ago, the high school had a letter grade that was, or a score, overall score that was very close to being a B. And that was partially impacted because the graduation rate, there was a lot of data that needed to be cleaned up that wasn't fully cleaned up. And so systems were put in place to make sure this follow-up is happening.
And there's somebody responsible for cleaning up that data?
Yes.
Okay, good. I mean,
Yes.
that's really important. I mean,
And
people
it
look
can
at
be 10
graduation
points.
rate.
And 10 points in a letter grade at the high school level is a lot.
Yes,
Yeah.
and this isn't a gradual point value. You either get 0 points, sorry, the points earned for the 4 to 7 year component, I think, is a gradual one. But when we talk about the next one, it's either 5 points or either 0, 5, or 10, I think. So it can matter a lot. And just for your, in case you're curious about cohort 2025, who graduated last year, whose data is not on here, currently their graduation rate is at 95%, which is higher than what we have there. So just in case. So automatically, the high school is going to get 10 points for this next year based on how this is calculated, because it's only going to get better. So then the graduation rate improvement piece, then this is only looking at 4-year students. This is on slide 111. This just looks at how cohort 2024 did compared to cohort 2023. If they did better, you get the full 10 points. Or if it was above 90%, you get the full 10 points. Cohort 2024 was already above 90%, so automatically full 10 points. And that means next year, cohort 2025, being at 95%, will also automatically get those 10 points. So high school has the benefit of knowing this part, they already have the points, but that doesn't mean they stop cleaning up their data.
Right. Please, no, please no.
Okay? Questions on graduation?
Well, and the higher we get that graduation rate, though, at some point, we're going to run out of growth points.
Well, but that's for the higher enough pieces. If you're at the 90% or above, you automatically get the full amount.
You get 10 points, but you don't get the
No, sorry,
graduate
this
improvement
is more like a, which area do you fall into?
Oh, okay.
You can either-
So we haven't gotten to line 18 yet.
Well, we are looking at line 18, but line 18 is you're in one of these 4 areas.
Okay,
You either
I'm
grew,
sorry.
or you're high enough, maintained, or dropped.
Okay.
And
got it.
so technically this year we grew and are high enough, but you just get 10 points.
Okay,
One way.
gotcha.
So you get sort of 2 options to get 10 points.
I got
Great
you.
question,
Thank you.
great question.
And Gina, just chime in anytime if you have something to add or a question to ask. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so then the last component, and this again applies only to the high school, is the College and Career Readiness System, referred to as CCRI. This is kind of why we talked about some of these other assessments in the assessment report that were not state achievement tests. So looking at the ACT outside of state achievement, the STAMP test, and the AP exams, because this is where this factors in as well.
But not a test that we used to give that was called College and Career.
CWRA.
Yeah, CWRA.
Correct.
That one. We don't do that anymore.
No.
Okay.
So this component is out of 20 points. It's designed to award schools points based on how their graduating cohort had done over the past couple of years with all these different factors. It's a menu of trackable activities, and I call it it's almost like a brag sheet. How did our students do? All these different things. And so there's a couple of the schools get something like this. I'm not showing you the entire thing. It's cut off. It goes so many cells to the right. But the counselors, the test coordinator, the CTE team at the high school, and myself track all 400 something graduating cohort students. So not necessarily just graduates. Any student who is defined as being in the graduating cohort.
Yep.
So students that we know are not going to be graduating, and students who graduated the previous year who graduated early. Those are, these are students that are included. So at the top over here, which you can't read because it's all so small, is different categories in which we can earn points. It's a menu. Schools are not expected to get points in every single category because some schools do things different. We rely heavily on AP exams. Other schools rely heavily on dual enrollment courses. So it just kind of depends on the school. Right. So these are the categories for which our district primarily earns points for. So we have, graduation requirements. We have ACT cut scores, which is helped by it being a state achievement test. We do have students take the SAT on their own, but now that being doing SAT school day in October hosted by us, we'll have more students who will fall into this category next year, or this school year, as we're getting closer. We have our AP exams, which is a big component. Then we have some points here that deal with the FAFSA and the seal of biliteracy. And then most of this down here is CTE related, other than the ASVAB piece. All different areas in which we can earn points. And you notice that they're color coded based on what are defined as college, what's defined as career, and then the purple, it can go either way. So we get, if a student earns, each of these had a point value, I should point out, so like for AP exams, they can earn 0.5 per exam that they got Medi-Cut score, which is usually a 3 on, up to a maximum of 2 points. If a student has earned at least 1 point anywhere, they are assigned a score of 10. If they earned at least 2 points collectively, they're assigned a score of 20. And if they can get 1 point in the college camp and 1 point in the career camp, they're given a score of 22. And so some new data that I have for you this year on the next slide. First, this is the number of students that were in the cohort, but collectively their average score of those 10s and 20s and 22s and zeros was 19.2. So really close to that 20. Wow. So on slide 118, we have a breakdown of what those students looked like. So we only had 1% of our students score zero, or give a score of 0 points. Almost half of them had a score of 22, which means they had 1 college point, 1 career point. So this is, what we really want to see is this really high, over 80% of our students getting 20s and 22s, because that's what's going to get us that average of a 20 if we're hoping to get up there. Then one other component of the CCRI is this military post-secondary bonus point, and that's a little bit later on your spreadsheet if you're looking at it separately. But basically, if we are able to demonstrate that 85% or higher of our students are going into post-secondary education or the military, we get a bonus point. Or if we show an improvement over the previous year, but ours is over 85%. Is in the 90 something I have it down there, 93.5%. And this is tracked by counselors they do as part of their ECAP lessons for seniors towards the end. They have students fill out a survey, which we're allowed to use to track that data. They're asked to answer honestly. So some students say, yes, I'm taking a gap year. I'm not planning to attend college. And so we get a list of where they're going to college because the counselors want that information. But 93.5% indicated they were either going to the military or post-secondary education. And so that automatically gives that bonus point, which is not included in the 19.2. That's separate from the 19.2. So any questions on CCRI before we kind of wrap this up?
I'm sorry, Justin, you said that is or isn't included?
It is not included, so it's 20.2 ultimately for CCRI stuff.
So if you participated, if you took CTE courses and got a certificate, and that certificate allowed you to enter the workforce,
That's
you're
not
certificated, but you would not count as post-secondary.
correct for that bonus point, correct.
For that bonus point, yeah.
Yeah. And I can feel the same feelings you may be feeling about that as well.
Yeah, give it away.
So there are a couple other bonus points that we can view as well. So I already talked about the post-secondary and military piece, but there are 3 other possible bonus points. The first one is the special education bonus point. This is just a bonus point that's given to schools based on how their number of special education students enrolled compares to the state. This is not something schools necessarily aspire to earn points for. This is just, it's more to offset or acknowledge that if a school has a very high SPED population, they probably got dinged in the proficiency and the growth piece of it. And so that it's acknowledging that was possibly a factor. So you can kind of see that spread for our district overall. We're not recruiting students to be in, special education. It's a need-based program. So we can't expect necessarily all students to always earn those points. But if we move down to the AC Sci bonus point, this is earned if a school this is the only part of the A through F accountability, again, that deals with the AZ science test in its current form of the A through F accountability system. You get it if you tested 95% of your students, and if your average proficiency, the percent of students who test proficient, was 1 standard deviation above the state. If we remember from the assessment report, our district typically tests about twice the proficiency of the state, so we have always earned this as long as we have been giving AZ Sci. All sites have gotten the 3 points. The high school gets 1 additional bonus point area for 3 bonus points, and that's for ACT Aspire, and it's simply, did they test 95% of their students? Not were they proficient, not anything other than did you test it? So not much to say about that other than that's just what it is. It's the only acknowledgement that of any aspect of ACT Aspire on A through F accountability. So we might see that shift if we get a new test. Hopefully that will be included in the proficiency component. So this kind of wraps things up for the most part. We get a point sum based on how students did overall from each of those different, or how our sites did for each of those different categories. Recall that Ventana Vista did not get any points for English learners because it didn't apply to them. So instead, they are weighted 85.95 out of 90, which scales them up to 95.3 or 5. And then the bonus points are added on after that. So then you see the total points each site earned for the 24-25 school year. Those are then compared to the cut scores that were approved at the very end of October by the state board. And you can see very clearly that all of our schools this year fall into the A range. So CFSD for the, I think, 4th year in a row is all A's, which also means our district gets a letter grade of an A as well, making us one of the few districts in the state that had all A's. I don't have that exact number. I'd have to look that up again. And you start getting into questions of what counts as a district. There are several districts that have 1 school.
Right.
And so, at what point do you sort of say, we are looking at schools of they have at least 4 sites, or
Or a unified district that has.
Yes, correct. Yeah. When we're looking at a site that has 20 schools, it's understandable that one of them maybe gets a B. It just kind of depends. So any final questions over any portion of the A through F accountability system?
It's simple.
Oh, goodness.
it's just math. It's simple. Wow.
And, looking ahead, the goal from the state is that instead of just reporting on a letter grade, a single letter grade, to get to a point where schools are being awarded a letter grade for each indicator. But that might change how these are calculated considerably. Because if you remember, for like English learners, you're either, there's clear cutoffs. It's not a gradual thing on there. So they have to really think about how they're going to change that system. So we might see a large, you learned how this kind of works. It's worked like this for the past 3 or 4 years, but we might have only another year or two of it before it changes how it looks. So
And certainly see
might need
the
another
reason
study session.
behind providing a letter grade for each component, though.
Right.
Yes, but it's possible that our sites wouldn't get an A in growth on 1 year. These are things to consider. All right, that's all for me, unless there's any questions.
But
Great
again,
presentation.
this is the data that we've been using to set the performance goals for the district and for the schools. So this is what we're tracking and monitoring along the way.
And unfortunately, they don't tell us exactly how we're going to be graded until after the school year is over. So the rule book for the 24-25 system is not published until, I don't know if it's officially been published yet. It's kind of like you get shipped the rule book after you play the board game, basically. So hopefully when they do so we're operating on, this is kind of how it was last year, this is probably how it's going to work this year, and then, oh yes, this is how it worked this year. But when they make that shift to indicator letter grades, hopefully they'll give more information earlier so we know.
Justin, is that an if, or have they already decided that they are going to?
It's decided that they are doing it, it's just they don't know how they're doing it, because they realize that the sort of analogy is all this together makes a nice, beautiful cake. But then you separate all those ingredients out. It might not be a great egg, and it might not be, the flour on its own might not be that great. You got to sort of figure out how are you going to grade these individual ingredients. And that's a task that the teams that are designing this have to tackle, and that they're looking into it.
Justin, I recall a number of years ago, maybe not that long ago, there was a time that Dr. Connery reviewed the raw data and found some errors that the state had made. Is somebody double checking? I mean, I guess when we get all A's, it's kind of easy to go, oh, it's got to be right. But is somebody looking to confirm that all the raw data is being reflected accurately?
In every component possible, probably not yet. But are there areas? Yes, there are areas that we've had to go back and look and go, hey, something is not quite right here.
And I also think I'll give Justin's kudos because he follows, the state does say, we're in window number 1 for, review your data that we've submitted. So when this data comes in, it kind of comes in waves, right? Because it's a lot of data and it has a lot of factors to it. And everything from our withdrawal codes, our withdrawal dates, on students, there's a lot of data that gets pulled just on surface level that impacts these numbers a great deal. So we do our best to clean and Justin monitors that to know when the data's coming in and works with the district registrars and our student information people, because it all plays into that.
They're entering data.
Yeah, a lot of it comes into also just, first we have to realize, learning how these processes are done in different areas. For instance, to be identified as a SPED student in terms of all the accountability part, you had to be a SPED student on October 1st. So we want to make sure that those numbers are correct. Was a student really supposed to have been exited or not before then?
Right.
Depending on, there's all the kinds of things that, how these processes need to be cleaned up so it's accurate when the data gets pulled, so we're not having to play catch up later. Chronic absenteeism was a piece in following that.
And Faye for a student seems simple. Do they enroll in the first 10 days of school and were they here continuously? Oh, except for EL, we'll do that differently. You just have to be enrolled on the day of the test. So it's just every little component matters. So as clean as we can possibly keep the data, and little things that you might not think are pivotal to some of these pieces really are, especially when you're looking at like our EL population that is small. A kid identified or enrolled makes a big difference in those numbers. Ventana could have a population, we could be one kid short and it could make a big difference. So I don't think, I think is there errors in the data? Yeah, but that's not always the state's fault too. It's both of ours to make sure, and there are, I think, more accountability systems put in place now than there were even 3 years ago.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a matter of going back to the graduation piece, not knowing but perhaps that some of this data was not being accurately followed up on, and highlighting it to those groups that, hey, this has to happen.
Not following a student where they went after us.
Yeah,
Looking at CCRI, I think earlier years we probably could have had more points for CCRI for the high school, but tracking all that data takes work. So systems have to be put in place to make sure we track that data. So there's a lot of small little pockets that are improving, but there's probably more pockets that we haven't found.
But we,
no, of course. And just
Makes you wonder about the inner workings of the minds of the people who came up with these formulas.
You were geeking out on it.
It was probably people like you, Tom.
I'm curious, do charter schools have the same, is it
If they are a alternative school, and I don't know if that just is all charter.
Alternative schools, they're not all charters. A lot of them are, but they're not all charters. They are for schools that potentially have 5 and 6 year kids that are taking longer to graduate. So alternative schools, I think there's a number of ways you qualify for an alternative school. But yes, charters are on the letter grade system. Private schools, however, are not.
Right, of course.
but the charters have the same?
yes.
They don't have, so they have we had that pie chart at the beginning, and they have a different pie chart
Okay.
as well, and I don't,
So you can't compare
Alternative do.
alternative to it, sorry.
alternative.
Charters, if they're not,
Traditional charters.
correct, if they're not alternative, and I lost where that is.
Traditional charters are subjected to the same
Correct.
Yes.
system,
Okay.
but alternatives.
Alternative high schools,
Would be different.
correct.
But those charters, for cases where the points are awarded based on cutoffs relative to an average, are they included in that average?
I don't, sorry, so for the charters for just the normal,
Are they incorporated, so when you look at a case where the points are allocated in part based on, you have to be X versus average, are charters included in that average?
yes,
That's a good
yes.
question. Yeah. For all public schools, whether traditional district schools or charter schools.
Charters
Make
are
up
part
the
of
state average, yes.
the state school system.
Right,
And a school district might have a school in the alternative.
yes.
So you might also have a system that has schools in traditional and in the alternative.
Yeah.
And the same thing goes for charter schools. You might have some that are in traditional and some that are in
Well, if
alternative.
you remember, not so long ago, some traditional district schools had a charter school.
Right,
Yeah.
They opened a charter as well.
Yep.
And then they did away with that.
no district has that anymore, to your
No.
knowledge?
No.
Oh, interesting.
It's not allowed anymore.
Oh, okay. I didn't realize that.
And although the rules are the same, the enrollment practices are very different.
Right,
So
Who they
that's important to
accept.
keep in mind.
yes.
Why I would ask if
Selective
if
schools
these
versus-
parameters are
right.
the
But,
Yes.
but it does impact when we're talking about school choice, and we talked about graduation rates, and you have a student
Yes.
that leaves us sophomore year and enrolls in a private school. If we don't follow up, that student appears like they've never actually got back into into a public school, and they might be classified as a non-grad, even though
Exactly.
we know that they are in a private system, so we have to follow up on that documentation and show that. So those are some of the things with all the school choices we have out there that can add complications to the system.
And it makes it very difficult then to compare just based on
Yes.
Right.
scores. I mean, you obviously have to be a little bit more critical.
But just as we're getting really good and clean at this,
Yeah.
they'll change the rules.
Right.
So that is, it is difficult. I know the state tries really hard to balance, and makes, this isn't just proficiency, right? This isn't just one score, and they look at how to provide labels fairly for all types of schools. And so, I mean, this is a topic of discussion, probably every month at the state board, and they're talking about how to make it as fair as possible. So
Not
it
to
gets-
disadvantage schools with populations.
right, because it gets frustrating from a school level, like Justin said, to not get the rule book ahead of time, but
Right.
Correct.
we are getting cleaner and cleaner at our data, so
Yeah.
it's good.
Thank you. That was, I'm not meaning to cut it off, but I just want to acknowledge and appreciate the depth, the breadth and depth of information that you provided us. You're obviously a master of this information. The way you conveyed it to us was very helpful, and it took a long time, and it's very valuable, so we appreciate it.
You're welcome.
But as I said, anybody else have any questions or comments of Justin?
Just so I'm clear, they decide the numerical cutoffs for the letter grades, and they release that every October, so it could be a different.
Correct.
number.
Yes,
Okay.
at times they have based them, so I'm just displaying them again up here, and notice they're different based on site level. They have at times, especially when they switched to a slightly new system, they've changed it to be based off standard deviations from an average instead, which can severely change things around. And so, but the last 3 years, I think, have been these exact scores, and before that, they were just slightly different. But yes, they have to approve them each year. So even though our sites know their points in August, and finalize points in August, we go, well, if based on last year's scores, that's probably an A, but we don't want to count our chickens before they hatch because the state board could vote on different cut scores. So we kind of avoid saying an A, other than if they're above 100 points, then we, okay, you're an A.
Yeah, right.
So, our schools have known they were probably A's for quite a while, but wait to make sure,
And again,
which is why we didn't present earlier than
the
this.
granular level of this information down to per student
Yes.
is shared with the sites. Principals and administrators are working with that, and that's part of your goal to improve
Correct.
on performance.
And intervening where they can with students who need different interventions, whether it be low growth
Right.
as a highly proficient student or low growth as a non-proficient student.
Absenteeism
Yes.
or
And
And all of those pieces together.
yes.
And I want to say Justin does an absolute phenomenal job at making the data not only available, but so easily
Understandable.
accessible to get down to a granular level, to get down to a teacher level. Some of the work we have with our data is truly, I would say, probably the best in the state. It is good. He does an excellent job at making it usable, just like he does here, but I really think it is something that allows us, when we start talking about growth and data and goals, to make sure that the data is not just available, but also usable to all parties. So it's really phenomenal that we can get down to the student level for our teachers.
And I recall hearing that from some of our administrators in the past, that having access to data at this level and with this detail makes their job so much
Yes.
easier. So kudos.
Otherwise, they had to get it into a usable form first.
Right.
And that took a lot of time just to get it to a usable form, and then they would have to analyze it. So it has cut down considerably. So, yes, Justin,
Cleaning the data oftentimes takes more work than
Yes.
organizing the data.
Yes,
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does. But he has done a phenomenal job with that.
And so I assume, so Justin, it sounds like is accessible to principals.
Yes.
And even us, we come to him occasionally with things that we need district-wide, and he's been extremely helpful and really produces some top-rated products.
Great to hear. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
You're welcome.
A little bit.
All right, thank you,
All right.
Justin.
So our second and final
substantive item on the agenda this evening is 5.2, Arizona Legislative and Governmental Activity. Thank you, Justin, very much.
Thank you.
Any comments on this? What? You're making a face.
You want me to comment on Arizona legislative governmental
Like
activity?
Well, I do, I have one, actually.
Oh.
I would like to just shout out to our friends and colleagues in TUSD and Sunnyside and
Yes.
Flowing Wells who all passed their override measures
Yes.
I don't
last
think
week.
Sunnyside did.
Gina's fist, yep,
I don't think Sunnyside did, unfortunately.
did.
I think, unless they had more than one measure. I know there was at least one measure
I
that
think
didn't.
you're right. I don't think Sunnyside.
Oh, really?
did.
I
Yeah,
looked it up this
unfortunately, I don't
morning.
think Sunnyside did.
I looked it up this
I
morning.
was really
and I thought
disappointed
they
to read
did.
that.
Really? Oh, no.
I know.
Well, I hope that I'm wrong, or I hope that I'm partially right, if not wholly right about that. But, you know, we know how important it is, and it is great to see communities across southern Arizona supporting their public schools. So, you know, I hope.
But I know for TUSD, it was a big deal. Like,
Yeah,
That's
this
huge.
was the first time in a long time.
It's
that-
historic
Yeah.
for TUSD. I'm looking right now, but no, it's a great thing to comment on. I hadn't thought of that, and it's great to see a lot of these going. Let's see.
It is. That was the only thing I had on my list.
TUSD, Flowing Wells, Sunnyside, yes,
We passed.
416, this is bonds
For 120 million?
for 120 million. Yes,
They passed it?
they did. Where did I read that they didn't? And you guys both
I
thought
thought they didn't either, so. but
Interesting.
Maybe it was,
I was doubting my
Tracking it.
research skills
Yeah,
when I
no,
looked this
good
morning.
job.
good job.
There's
And
a lot
actually,
going on
it-
in the state.
Yeah, there
There were
is.
a lot at the state.
That
throughout the
passed?
No, that just in general, that were going, so
Did not
Pima,
pass.
that did not pass.
Oh,
So
is that
Pima
right?
County is really fortunate that,
Yeah.
I was so glad to see it, and I know that they have tried before and not gotten this
Well,
result.
Sunny,
So,
I mean, for TUSD is
That's-
historic. We
yeah.
haven't had
Oh,
it.
yeah.
yeah. So this is great for them. It's great for their students. I was really happy to see it.
And their communities.
Dina? Oh, I just thought you were looking like you were going to say something. Yeah, I know. I know.
This is, again, let's just say, it's not a great way to fund public education.
It is
No,
not.
no.
You're right.
No.
And you're
It's
right to
not the
point
way
that
to
out.
fund public education.
No. Oh.
Correct.
Yes.
Yes.
So especially with so much uncertainty
Yes.
in the world right now.
Okay. Agenda planning is on Wednesday. It is
At
Tom and
8
myself. And we're
a.m.
meeting at 8
8
a.m.
Wowza.
8 a.m. That's all I have to say about that. 8 a.m. It's after 9 p.m. now.
Thankfully, it's not till Wednesday.
Oh my gosh, I know, exactly. I will entertain a motion to adjourn unless anyone else has anything to add to either agenda planning or
I'll move to adjourn.
you. We have a motion, is there a second?
I'll second.
Motion and a second to adjourn. All those in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries 5-0. We
Remember,
are
our next
adjourned.
meeting is also on a Monday?
Yes, I was
on
gonna mention
Monday.
that because it's the Monday of Thanksgiving.
Yep.
Yes.
Yeah,